Hey, how's it going, everyone? Today we're going to be converting strings into integers and integers into strings. So this is a classic problem, and I personally find this question incredibly annoying, mostly because of the random edge cases and um, just, you have to be very careful with this kind of problem just because you have to make sure that your output is going in the right direction. So you don't want to return the reverse string, and you have to make sure you take care of test cases like what happens if you're given 0, what happens if you're given a negative. So that's typically what you're going to make a mistake on in this question. So in general, what you want to do is you want to go digit by digit. So for instance, for integers, we're going to be constantly dividing by 10 and then appending to the string. And then for the string to integer, we're going to be basically scrolling through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then at each step converting each character digit into an integer digit. So without any further ado, let's begin. I think the first thing we need to do is get our edge cases out of the way. So we're going to say, we're going to check if it's negative. We're going to check if it's 0, and then we're going to go digit by digit. So let's see. So if x is less than 0, we're gonna set x to equal negative x, and then we're gonna say negative equals true. Otherwise, we're gonna check if x equals 0. We're gonna say return 0. So from here we can safely say x is a positive integer greater than 0. And this is a kind of assumption that, if you're to do this problem the very first time, you might just assume that it's a positive integer greater than 0. In an interview, I would highly suggest to not do this assumption, or at least check with your interviewer, hey, can we assume that this is a positive integer greater than 0? And if not, just add these two test cases. So by default, negative equals false, of course. And then we're going to go digit by digit. So we're going to say while x, we're going to hold our result in our res array. We're going to say while x, we're going to say what's the character of x? We're going to say x mod 10. So that's going to be our rightmost digit. And how do we convert it to a string? So we're not allowed to use the built-in string function or the built-in int function. So we're going to examine the function chr, which turns a character into its integer value. And we're going to look at the ord function, which turns, oh no, it's vice versa. So this one, chr turns an int value to character, and this ord function turns a char to an int. And what this means is it doesn't mean, 0 goes to 1 or it goes to 0. It means that 0 is going to go into the, internal integer representation of 0. So if we were to just run Python 3 and we were to say ord of 0, what we would get is 48, because that's the internal representation. Now, how do we take advantage of this? So we're going to say x mod 10, that's going to be our rightmost digit. We're going to say we're going to say the value of this is going to be, we need to convert the integer into a character. But first, what we're going to do is we're going to say we want the character, but we want to add it, or no, we want to subtract. No, we want to add it to whatever the ord of 0 is. So whatever value this is. So for instance, if x equals 1, then our inner value is going to be that 48 value plus 1, which is going to give us 49. And then when that 49 gets converted back to a character, it's going to be converted to a 1. And that's what we need to use. So this ord of 0 is kind of sets the baseline. So it takes whatever the base integer of the integer value of 0 is, and then adds whatever the rightmost digit is. So we're going to say res.append, and then just copy this. One more bracket. And then we have to not forget to do x divided by 10. And this basically shifts the value over. So if we have something like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then what's going to happen is we're going to extract 5, and then we're going to change x back into 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we're going to keep doing this while we still have x. So let's delete this. And then at the end, we're just going to return a joined version of the string. However, think about the order in which we're appending. So here when we did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we're taking the rightmost value first and appending it. So our string internally is going to be represented as 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So before we join it, what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to take the reverse. So we're going to have to reverse res and then join it. And then what do we have to remember? Well, if it's negative, what do we have to do? We have to first if neg res.append negative. Because we append it, when we reverse it, the negative is going to be the first character. And if the value is negative, we have to remember to put the negative sign there. So let's take a look at string to integer. This one is the exact same idea, except we're going front to back and back to front. So now we're going to say if s equals 0, we're just going to return 0. Actually, let's check negative first. So let's say if s 0 equals negative, we're going to say neg equals true. Then we're going to say s equals s, and then we're going to remove the first value. We're going to remove the negative. And then if s equals 0, we're going to return 0. And the reason why we're checking negative first is because what if we get a case like this? This is an incredibly annoying case that for some reason is a valid test case. If we're given negative 0, which shouldn't really even count, then we're going to return 0. So then what we're going to say is we're going to go from left to right, and then each time we're going to shift our result. So we're going to start with result equals 0, then we're going to go for c in s, so for every character in s, we're going to say res equals res times 10 plus whatever the integer value of c is. So now how do we calculate the integer value backwards? So let's remember our two functions. We have ord and we have chr, which goes ord takes char to int, and chr takes an int to char. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing. We're going to see what's the ord of 0. And then we're going to take the ord of c, and then we're just going to subtract it. And let's see if that's correct. So the ord of c is going to be, for example, if c equals 5, then this is going to give us some number like 53, I guess. Yeah, 53. And then we're going to subtract it by ord of 0, which we checked was 48. So in total, this is going to give us 53 minus 48 equals 5. And yeah, that looks correct. So each time we multiply the result by 10, and then we add the character value. And at the end, we're going to return negative res if negative else res. Now, I'm not sure if we're missing anything. This is the kind of question where you're almost always going to be missing something on your first go. So let's just review it. So string to integer, we're going to say by default it's not negative. We're going to check if there's a negative sign. We're going to set negative to equal true. And we're going to cut off the negative, the first negative character. We're going to check if s equals 0 and return 0. So from here, we're guaranteed that s is a positive integer. For example, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we're going to use ord to each time we're going to convert ord into the, we're going to turn the character into the ordinal, and then we're going to subtract whatever the shift over is based on 0. So if c equals 0, ord of 0 minus ord of 0 is certainly going to be 0. That's correct. If it's 1, it's going to be 1 higher, so it's going to be 49. So I think this part is correct. And then we're going to return negative if it's negative, otherwise we're just going to return the result. And before we finally test this, let's do one more check of our integer to string. We're doing the same thing. We're taking care of the negatives. Then we're taking care of the 0 case. And then we're going to be returning the results. So each time we're going to take the CHR of x mod 10. So we're going to take the rightmost value. And then we're going to add to it whatever the shift is based on 0. So if x mod 10 is 0, then we're just doing CHR ord of 0, which is 0. And otherwise, if this is 1, 2, or 3, we're just going to be shifting it up by whatever that value is. And then each time we're going to be shifting x over to the right by dividing it by 10. And then at the end, if it's negative, we're going to be appending a negative. And of course, we have to remember to reverse it before we return it, simply because while we were appending it, we were appending it in the reverse order. So anyways, let's test this out. And look at that. We managed to pass all our test cases on the first try. And the runtime here is O of n, because we're going through where n is the number of bits, or not bits, the number of digits, because for each bit, for each digit, we're going to be touching it once. Now, interestingly enough, for int to string, we're doing O of n space because we have this intermediate results array that holds onto our values. However, in string to int, other than copying this slice here, which is really unnecessary, it's more just to keep our code clean, we're not actually storing, we're storing the result in the actual result. So string to int, you could very well do it in O of 1 space. However, integer to string, because of the fact that strings are immutable, that would be pretty much impossible, at least in Python, if you were to do a char star for instance in C um, or some other language where you had mutable strings, then you could actually store the result in the string. Anyways, if you enjoyed this video, please make sure to like and subscribe. And if you're interested in personalized help, then head on over to our site and book an appointment with either me or one of my associates. Have a great day.